You stared at the screen. The numbers looked fine. Your bank account wasn't. A smart person shouldn't feel this confused about money. You told yourself it would make sense tomorrow. You refreshed the app again. Nothing changed. Same balance, same pressure. Somehow payday never felt like progress anymore. Most terrible money decisions aren't made by careless people. They're made by intelligent people. People who think carefully, people who analyze everything, people who genuinely believe they're being logical. And that's what makes this dangerous. Smart people rarely act without reasons. The problem is that the reasons often arrive after the decision. Logic becomes a defense attorney, not a judge. Mark believed he was responsible. Good job, steady income, no major disasters. From the outside, his life looked financially healthy. Yet something felt off. Every raise disappeared, every improvement faded, every goal moved further away. The finish line never stayed still, so he worked harder. Longer hours, more responsibility, bigger paychecks. The strategy seemed obvious. For a while, it worked. More money arrived, more comfort arrived, more spending arrived. Nobody noticed the last part. The new apartment felt earned. The newer car felt reasonable. The upgraded lifestyle felt deserved. Nothing seemed excessive. That's how the pattern hides. Because nobody wakes up and decides to sabotage their future. It happens gradually. Comfort by comfort, upgrade by upgrade, justification by justification. One night he opened his banking app, not to check a bill, not to move money, just to understand where everything was going. The transactions looked ordinary: coffee, food delivery, streaming services, small purchases scattered across the month. Nothing looked alarming. That was the alarming part. There wasn't a giant mistake. There were hundreds of invisible ones, each too small to feel important. He kept scrolling. More purchases, more subscriptions, more forgotten expenses, more evidence than he expected. Then a strange question appeared. What if money wasn't the problem? What if behavior was? What if the real battle wasn't mathematical? What if it was psychological? Welcome to Lion Invests. In this video, we break down why smart people make terrible money decisions. Not from a financial perspective alone, but from a human one. And by the end of this video, you'll understand the psychology behind it. The mistake most people never notice. The pattern quietly shaping their future. And what can be done differently. If that sounds valuable, subscribe to Lion Invests. Because understanding money is useful. Understanding yourself is powerful. And most people confuse the two. The next morning, something clicked. Every purchase seemed connected. Not by dollars, by emotions. That changed everything. Stress showed up first. The spending arrived later. The transaction looked financial. The trigger wasn't. It was emotional. A difficult day became takeout. A frustrating week became shopping. A disappointing month became a vacation. The spending wasn't random. It was relief. That's the part nobody talks about. Money leaves the account. The feeling gets the attention. The brain remembers the relief, not the cost. So the cycle repeats. Feel bad. Spend. Feel better. Repeat. The brain loves shortcuts, especially emotional ones. Relief feels rewarding. Reward feels productive, even when nothing improves. This is why intelligent people get trapped. Not because they're irrational, because they're human. And human beings are emotional first, rational second. We like to believe the opposite. We imagine ourselves calculating everything, thinking objectively, making careful choices. Reality is messier. One study found that emotions influence decisions before conscious reasoning catches up. The brain moves first. The explanation arrives later. Most people never notice. Smart people often explain it away. That's the hidden advantage of intelligence and the hidden danger. It creates better explanations, not necessarily better decisions. Those are very different things. Think about the last thing you regretted buying. It probably made sense at the time. You had reasons, good reasons. That's why you bought it. The purchase wasn't really about the object. It was about the story attached to it. Confidence, status, comfort, identity. Money is rarely just money. It's emotion, it's self-worth, it's security, it's fear wearing a financial disguise. And once you understand that, human behavior starts making sense. People aren't buying products, they're buying feelings. The products are just delivery systems. Mark started noticing this everywhere. Coworkers upgrading cars, friends upgrading homes, people upgrading lifestyles. Nobody seemed satisfied for long. At first, the pattern looked harmless. Then he noticed something. The happiness always faded. The payment usually didn't. That changed the equation. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Humans quickly adjust to improvements. What once felt exciting becomes normal. Then normal becomes expected. Then expected becomes invisible. That's why raises often disappoint people, not immediately, a few months later, when the excitement disappears. But the new expenses remain. The average person expects income growth to solve financial stress. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it amplifies it. Because spending grows alongside income. Lifestyle inflation is a strange treadmill. You move faster, you earn more. Yet somehow, the scenery never changes. You're still running. Mark recognized himself in that idea. Every raise had improved his life. But every raise had also increased expectations. Nobody warned him about that part. He never questioned it. The really dangerous part isn't spending more. It's believing you deserve every increase. Because once spending becomes identity, cutting back feels like losing status, not saving money. That's where psychology takes over. Humans compare constantly. Friends, neighbors, coworkers. Social media accelerates everything. Someone always has more. A bigger house, a newer car, a better vacation, a more impressive life. The comparison feels harmless until it influences behavior. Then spending becomes performance, not necessity, not value, and performance is expensive because there is no finish line. Somebody will always appear ahead. The race never ends. That's why so many people feel stuck. According to Federal Reserve data, many Americans struggle to cover unexpected expenses. Not because they're lazy, not because they're unintelligent, because behavior compounds. Just like interest does. Small decisions become patterns, patterns become habits, habits become lifestyles, lifestyles become outcomes, usually without permission. This is where things got personal for me. I used to think financial discipline meant avoiding obvious mistakes. That was my entire definition. Nothing more, nothing deeper. If I wasn't doing anything reckless, I assumed I was doing fine. Bills paid, income growing, everything looked normal until I looked closer. One evening I reviewed months of spending, not categories, not budgets, just behavior, just patterns. And what I found made me uncomfortable. Almost every unnecessary purchase followed stress, not celebration, not joy, stress. Suddenly, the pattern was impossible to ignore. That realization stayed with me because nothing changed overnight. My income stayed the same, my bills stayed the same, but my understanding changed completely. Once you see a pattern, you start seeing it everywhere, not just in yourself, in friends, in entire cultures. The economy runs on human behavior, and human behavior runs on emotion. That's why markets move. That's why bubbles form. That's why people repeat mistakes. Most financial advice ignores this. It focuses on math. Numbers matter, but behavior decides whether the numbers ever work. That's the difference. A perfect financial plan means very little if your emotions constantly override it. Knowledge alone doesn't create wealth. Consistent behavior does. And behavior is psychological. This is where smart people often struggle. They try to solve emotional problems intellectually. They collect more information, more books, more strategies. But information isn't the missing piece. Most people already know they should save. Most people already know they should invest. The issue is rarely awareness, it's execution. Think about exercise. Almost everyone understands the basics. Yet understanding isn't the same as doing. Money works the same way. Knowledge doesn't automatically become action. And honestly, that's good news. Because if the problem were intelligence, many people would be stuck forever. But behavior can change. Awareness can grow. The first shift is noticing triggers, not purchases, triggers. What emotion existed before the spending? That's the real question. Was it boredom, stress, anxiety, loneliness? The answer matters more than the receipt. Because receipts show outcomes, emotions show causes. Most people track the outcome. Almost nobody tracks the cause. That's why patterns survive. Imagine tracking spending differently. not just the amount, but the feeling attached to it. Suddenly, behavior becomes visible, and visibility changes everything. The brain dislikes being observed. Hidden habits thrive in darkness. They weaken when examined. That's true financially. It's true psychologically. Mark started doing exactly that. Every unnecessary purchase got a note, not what he bought, why he bought it. The answer surprised him. The same emotions appeared repeatedly. Stress after work, frustration after setbacks, restlessness on weekends. The pattern was remarkably consistent. For the first time, spending looked less like a money issue and more like a behavioral loop. Cause, response. That's when real change became possible. Not because he became smarter, because he became more aware. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates change. Now you might be thinking, this sounds too simple. Maybe, but most powerful changes are. Complexity isn't always depth. The brain wants dramatic solutions, huge transformations, massive breakthroughs. Yet most futures are built by small, repeated actions. Quietly. That's true for debt. It's true for wealth. It's true for habits. Repetition is more powerful than intensity, every time. Consider investing for a moment. Many people delay starting, waiting for more money, better timing, more confidence. Years pass that way, then decades, and eventually they realize something painful. Time was the asset they needed most, not money. A person investing $300 a month at age 25 often ends up far ahead of someone investing much more later. Compound interest rewards time, not perfection. That's what makes opportunity cost emotional. You're not just losing dollars, you're losing future possibilities. Futures you'll never fully see. That's the hidden price. This is where the story changes, because awareness isn't meant to create guilt. It's meant to create clarity. Guilt freezes people. Clarity moves them forward. The goal isn't becoming perfect. Perfect people don't exist. The goal is making slightly better decisions, consistently, over long periods. One delayed purchase matters, one automated investment matters, one avoided emotional reaction matters, not because it's huge, because it repeats. Small actions become systems, systems become outcomes. That's how wealth is usually built, not through dramatic moments, through structure. The architect understands this, not because he's smarter than the drifter, because he trusts systems more than feelings, especially on difficult days. Feelings change constantly, systems don't. That's why automation matters. It removes negotiation from important decisions. Every month becomes easier. When decisions happen automatically, investing becomes default, saving becomes default, progress becomes quieter, and quiet progress is often underestimated because modern culture celebrates visible success, not invisible discipline. Yet invisible discipline creates visible success, eventually. Most people want motivation. What they really need is structure. Motivation disappears. Structure remains. That's the difference. Imagine planting a tree, then digging it up every week to check its growth. It would never thrive. Investing works similarly. Growth often feels invisible until one day it isn't. Then people call it luck, even though it was patience all along. That's why financial freedom feels strange. It isn't built in one decision. It's built in thousands, most of which feel insignificant. At the time, the future is shaped quietly through ordinary days, ordinary purchases, ordinary habits, ordinary choices. And that's what makes this powerful. You don't need a different life. You need a different relationship with your decisions. That's where change begins, not elsewhere. Because every purchase casts a vote for the future you're creating, whether you notice it or not. The votes accumulate every single day. The uncomfortable truth is simple. Smart people aren't immune to bad decisions. Sometimes they're better at hiding them, even from themselves, especially from themselves. But the hopeful truth matters more. The same awareness that exposes patterns can also change them. That's where growth starts. Not with money, with honesty, honest observation, honest reflection, honest responsibility. That's the foundation. Nobody can change yesterday's choices. Those decisions are gone. But tomorrow's decisions are still waiting. That's where your power lives, not in regret. Financial freedom isn't a number, Not really. It's the ability to make decisions from intention instead of reaction. That's a different life. And that life begins earlier than people think. It begins with awareness, then small adjustments, then consistency, then time. Time does most of the heavy lifting. Just like debt compounds, good decisions compound too, quietly, relentlessly. So pay attention to the invisible things, the habits, the emotions, the stories you tell yourself. That's where outcomes begin, because your future isn't built by one giant decision. It's built by repeated behavior, day after day, month after month, year after year. And maybe that's the real lesson. Your financial life is not being shaped by what you know. It's being shaped by what you repeatedly do. So notice the pattern, then change the pattern. If this video made you think differently about money, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear which pattern stood out most. Because awareness grows through conversation. And if you found value in this, subscribe to Lion Invest. We're not just studying money here, we're studying the behavior behind it. And before you go, watch the next video, because understanding one financial pattern is useful. Understanding how they connect is transformational.